Media Days coming up next week, October 3rd. It sounds like Illinois will be sending two of their veteran players out to Chicago. Is Brad Underwood trying to send a message? Let's talk about it. Locked On Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another live episode of Locked On Illini. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at the Sunny V. You can find me at IlliniCast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, you can find us on your favorite audio platform or on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you'd like to support the show, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Costs you guys absolutely nothing, yet it helps this channel a great deal. We continue to grow. We're on our way. I see 1,300. Hopefully we can get there in about a week or so. And again, this channel is just over 4 months old. So all thanks to the support I get on this channel, providing you guys daily Illini content. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so Media Days are in Chicago next week, October 3rd, Thursday. And in ironic turn, I will not be able to attend. Normally, obviously, I lived in Chicago my entire life, and the minute I move out, they decide to have media days there, and I won't be able to attend, unfortunately, this season. But that doesn't mean that Illinois won't be having a presence there, and that doesn't mean I won't be covering it. And I just recently saw a release saying that Brad Underwood was going to be bringing Rodgers and Kylan Boswell with him to Chicago, and I just kind of wanted to look into it a little bit. Some of you, in particular my everydayers, saw yesterday me talk about what kind of leadership, who was going to step up when it came to leadership, and who the coaching staff was going to kind of look at and lean on. And with the announcement that Rodgers and Kylan Boswell were the two picks, I kind of wanted to just bring it up and discuss with you if you guys all thought that this meant anything. Now, Rodgers to me was a no-brainer. Rodgers has been in the program already 2 years. He's entering his third season. He's been a complete team player his entire career. He does so many things well on the basketball court. He's the type of player that every team that has championship aspirations needs. He's a local Chicago guy, got recruited by Brad Underwood. And if nothing else, with the huge turnover on the team, Ty brings some kind of calmness, a continuation of the culture that the program has kind of already built the last few years. So Rodgers coming to Chicago, and again, with it being in Chicago, where he played his high school hoops, I think it's kind of extra special for him, and it's kind of a reward, which is a lot. It's kind of what a lot of coaches do when it comes to these media days. It's if they see you put in the work, it's kind of a reward for your career and say, hey, you've earned this opportunity. You're going to get coached up. Media is going to ask you certain type of questions, but, you deserve the spotlight on this day. And so Rodgers being one of the selections really didn't surprise me all too much. The other one also didn't really surprise me. And I'll get to some of your guys' comments at the end of the show. Kylan Boswell, the former 5-star who went on to play at Arizona and decided to come back home this season, playing his third year in college basketball now. Again, he's probably the one position I'm most confident will be starting at the point guard spot. And I think right now, my first impressions when I saw this was Brad Underwood's trying to establish that, hey, Kylan, we're really counting on you this year. A lot of what's perceived as our most talented players, our best scorers, have never played college basketball before. A guy like Kasparis Jakushonis, Will Riley, those type of players, they have never stepped foot on college basketball court. And so, Kylan, when things get crazy out there, when the crowd is raucous, we want you to be the steadying influence. I think Kylan becoming one of the options for media day kind of sends a message to the rest of the team that, hey, this is our leader. I personally like it. I played basketball my entire life. I like it when the point guard is considered the captain, because for the most part, I think any team has a higher floor when the point guard is respected. He is the quote unquote quarterback of the offense. He's the guy you want to be able to trust to run the show. And again, with Kylan's experience at Arizona, we're not talking about one of the smaller schools where he's kind of leveling up. That's not the case at all. Kylan has played top level basketball before, and right now, he had his fun. Now we're at the point where he's going to be counted on to be the calming influence, the veteran on this team. And so I think Brad Underwood is basically sending a message, not necessarily to us. I mean, if you asked fans, I think Kylan would probably have come up pretty high up on the list of possible people that we would have sent. But, you had guys like Kasparis. Like, maybe Brad Underwood would want to send a guy like Kasparis, who is arguably one of the most talked about players in all of college basketball this offseason. Chose not to. Dre Gibbs-Longhorn. I mean, I guess that one is understandable because I don't know how big of a role he's going to have. But ultimately, Brad decided on Kylan Boswell. And to me, that kind of just cements the expectation that Kylan needs to be a leader on this team next year. We don't necessarily need the breakout year. We just need him to be a solid 13, 14 point per game, 5-6 assists, play good, solid defense, maybe be in the conversation for all Big Ten. He doesn't have to necessarily win it, especially when you have guys like Braden Smith and, the conference in general got a lot more talent coming in this season. But a guy who at the end of the season can be argued for the spot. And do I think he's ready for it? I hope so. From what I've heard, he should be. But, who does think he's ready for it? That's Brad Underwood. And honestly, that's the only opinion that matters. So let me know what kind of questions you want me to find a way to ask for Media Day next Thursday. Again, I'll have an opportunity. I won't be there personally, but I will try to establish some sort of presence out there. Let me know what kind of questions you have, what you're thinking. What do you think of the Ty Rodgers and Kylan Boswell duo? Do you think those are the two right guys? Would you have sent someone else? Maybe a guy like Ben Hummerkaus, who is now, I believe, in his 4th or 5th season. Another veteran that we're going to count on. But let me know what you guys think. And right after this, we're going to be talking a little bit more Penn State, Illinois. It's time to highlight my Roy Player of the Week. Roy is a new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. Download Roy for iOS or Android and enter referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. This week, we've selected Kylan Fagan because 13 carries, 64 yards. It really sounds like he's turning the season around from his early struggles. I'm giving Kylan Fagan $100 on Roy. If you were impressed, as we were with his performance on Saturday, you can show him some love too. Just hop on Roy and throw in a few bucks. If everyone pitches in just $10, it adds up fast for Kylan. Now you have the chance to show your appreciation for Kylan and his standout performance this week, as well as what he'll continue to bring to our program. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. All right, here at Locked On, today's supposed to be the Tuesday episode, so most of you know, we're recording a couple hours early, just scheduling differences, but Tuesdays here belong to one man and one man only, and that's Big Ten Ted, who I'm going to be bringing on. Ted, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's great to be live with you. It's great to interact with the Illinois audience. And, even though the orange and blue may be coming off of a loss, very, very competitive, which we'll certainly get into here in just a little bit. But, I said it today over on my network. It's novel that keeps on turning pages and telling stories, and the plot twists kind of keep on going up. And I'm excited for these next couple of weeks, right? We're all looking forward to October 12th. We're going to have some big time games coming up that weekend, but don't look ahead. Don't look ahead, because there could be some pretty competitive games this weekend.
This season has just been fun because not only do we have the 4 new teams coming in from the West Coast, but you have these teams who are just traditionally not very good in the sense of Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers, all a combined 12-0 coming into this, coming into last week. Illinois obviously got their first loss, but I feel like brought in a new level of engagement and excitement from fan bases that previously may not necessarily be as passionate about the football side as the basketball side. And so I think this is kind of a dream come true for a Commissioner Petiti, in the sense where, again, Indiana, as you've mentioned before, their content is doing fantastic. Illinois, usually football content, it doesn't do nearly as well. But once we're on that 4-0 start, I was actually able to talk about Illinois football on this channel, which I really, really appreciate. And, it's just been a fun season so far.
Oh, it's been so fun. It's been so fun. It's been great for folks like myself and you, right, as well. Plenty to talk about. And you mentioned those basketball schools, right? The Rutgers of the world, the Indianas, right? The Illinois, that maybe this time of year they're looking forward to, that event that's going to be going on in Chicago in a couple of days, in Big Ten basketball media days. Now they're looking forward to, how many games are we going to win now? How can we keep that 0 on the backside of our record right now? And I just think that the Big Ten is so much deeper in the middle this year. And I'm so excited for some of these matchups down the stretch, because of what the middle of the conference has become, and how much more difficult that some of these matchups are going to be for maybe some of the big boys that have Big Ten championship aspirations. I said on my program today, there are 7 teams, I think, in the Big Ten that could finish with an 8-1 conference record or better. There's a scenario where all 7 of them are 8-1. And like the 12-team college football playoff, right, that has been sold to us, I should say, as more teams are going to be in it. So there's going to be more interest. There's going to be more intrigue. There's going to be more meaningful games down the stretch. Now without divisions, right? When you look at the East Division, it's been, it's going to come down to Michigan and Ohio State, right? And then maybe the rest of the teams, and the interest really falls off. Now you're going to have a lot more interest in the road leading up to that Big Ten championship game to Indianapolis. There's going to be a lot more bigger games in the Big Ten regular season leading up to that. And that just makes, I think, for a lot of excitement for fans around the Big Ten.
I completely agree. A lot of the excitement right now is focused, obviously, on Indiana with the new head coach and their high-flying offense and defense. But, I mean, Ted, talk to me real quick, okay? I really feel like, I don't want Illinois to all of a sudden be forgotten. This game that they had against Penn State, the number 9 team in the country, they went into Happy Valley on a Saturday night with their fake whiteout, fake's not the right word, their unofficial whiteout energy. And honestly, they competed. They were, with 2 minutes left, it was a 14-7 game. And I don't know, and again, this is where I come with bias, so I'm going to ask you to follow it up with your unbiased opinion. I don't know necessarily if Indiana or Rutgers could compete at that level in that sort of environment. So us taking our first loss while those two continue to be the storylines, being undefeated, breaks my heart a little bit. But let me step back and let's hear what you thought of the game between the Fighting Illini and the Nittany Lions on Saturday.
Yeah, Rutgers and Indiana down the stretch, they're going to have their opportunities at certainly some big games away from home, away from Piscataway and Bloomington. So they're going to get that opportunity. So we're going to find out if they can play with some of the Big Ten's best teams. But as you said, this was a ultra competitive game. A methodical game is how I described it, specifically from the Penn State point of view, but it was certainly methodical as well from the Illinois point of view. I thought in my preview, I said this was going to be the battle of the coordinators. Andy Kotelnicki for Penn State. You look at Barry Lunney Jr., 2 of the better play callers in this conference so far. It came down to the battle of the coordinators just on the defensive side of the football. Tom Allen brought it. Aaron Henry brought it in this particular football game. Nothing was easy. Everything was difficult for both offenses in this particular football game. And I was impressed in how Illinois was able to hang around. They certainly left some chips on the table, right? They had a 1st and goal to 2. I think that was the end of the first half, right, where the ball just kept on going back and back and back and back, eventually leading to a missed field goal. So, I mean, when you come up on the short end of the stick, you're going to nitpick. You're going to find those missed opportunities. And there were some, certainly, for Illinois. And I'm not a big moral victory guy, but I think if you look at this game for Illinois, and I said this in the preview, if Illinois plays Penn State close, if they cover that absolutely ridiculous spread, right? One of the most ridiculous spreads I've seen in some time, by the way, 18, 19 points, whatever book you were looking at. But if they're competitive, I think that's going to say a lot about Illinois, that they can hang with just about any team in the Big Ten. I still believe that. Like, I look at the rest of Illinois' schedule down the road. Like Oregon, yeah, that's going to be tough. But Michigan, right now, the way they finished that game against Minnesota, this is an Illinois team, and that's at home. We know the Red Grange game, and that atmosphere is going to be crazy that particular weekend in Champaign. I look at a lot of these games here down the stretch, and I think Illinois, I mean, this is no question a team that could win 9 games. They could win 10 games, I think, when all is said and done. And I still am very impressed with Luke Altmaier, right? He kept on getting hit and gotten hit and gotten hit. Like, it was very similar to the game in Champaign, except he did not turn the football over as much last year. I think that shows growth. I think that shows development with number 9 in orange and blue in there at quarterback. So I know there's going to be Illini fans out there that are, only scoring 7 points, but that's a really good Penn State defense. It is. That front is just, this was kind of a little bit of a coming out party for them, certainly getting pressure on the quarterback. So do they have certain things to patch up and figure out? Yeah, they do. But I think this Illinois team is going to be just fine. And they're good. That we talked about Oregon, that game. I think that they could certainly push back against the Ducks in that game. That's one game that not a lot of people are talking about when they talk about some big games down the stretch, but that's an interesting one. Looking forward to that and a lot of other games involving the orange and blue the rest of the way.
It will be fun. I was taking a look at the K Ford ratings, a guy who I really like his formula. Yep. He releases them basically every Sunday night, Monday morning. And right now, the probability of Illinois winning 8+ games, I believe, is in the 60% range.
Yep.
And again, I'm not a moral victory type of guy. I mean, maybe I am slightly, and this is kind of going in that direction. But if you had told me, and not just me, any Illini fan, that, hey, once you get to your first bye week, you're going to be 4-1. And all of a sudden, you're projected. Keep in mind, the Vegas over-under was 5.5.
Yep.
Entering your first bye week, you're going to be projected to win 8+ games. There's not one of us that would have been disappointed by that. There's not one of us that wouldn't have been less than excited about that. So that's why, I know it was a very unfortunate loss, and in the sense because we're so close to winning it. It's one of those things. If we're blown out, maybe it's like, oh yeah, obviously, Penn State's up here still, Illinois is still down here. And while that's still maybe the case, I think there's a clear difference in the talent that was on the football field on Saturday night. Yeah. Just to know that we were so close to being 5-0, and this Illinois team with this schedule that we've played, being 5-0, beating Penn State on a Saturday night, would have gotten that national attention. Would have brought the eyes and ears of maybe the Fox when it comes to that Michigan game, sure, that big noon football. But now with the loss now, again, the Indiana Rutgers still being undefeated. It's just one of those things where I'm trying to take a step back. It's bye week. I'm talking to my other Illini fans, whether they're watchers of the show or just in my group of friends. And it's just it's okay just to sit back and enjoy the moment for a second. We're still in a really, really good spot. But we've been talking a lot of Illini. Ted, there's a couple other good games this past weekend. Let's just talk about those real quick.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think the first one, I'm going to just hit some bullet points. I think going on along the week. That was certainly in the conference. Big noon, Michigan and Minnesota. Boy, it looked like the Wolverines were going to roll in that game. But you got to give credit to Minnesota and how they were able to battle back. This is a 2-3 football team right now. And you look at the way that North Carolina game ended, a couple of missed kicks. That was the difference in the game. You look at the way this Michigan game ended, and let's call a spade, and the Big Ten has admitted as such. the Gophers got screwed. Like let's not say anything other than that. Okay, that's because here's the deal. The way that game was going and how Minnesota was moving the football through the air, Max Brosmer was gaining a lot of confidence towards the end of that game, right? And he just keeps on getting better and better and better. If they recover that onside kick, they at minimum force overtime. And then who knows once you reset and get to that extra period. And then what are we talking about right now if Minnesota is able to take home the Little Brown Jug for the first time since 2014? About Michigan. Like Michigan right now, they're sitting at number 10 in the rankings. I think they're sitting up there with Missouri as maybe some of the most overrated teams in college football right now. I very firmly believe that. Like this is in the end, it's a one-dimensional team. Okay. And Illinois, we just talked about that game. Michigan is going to play Indiana. Like they're going to play a lot of these. And we didn't even mention Oregon, didn't even mention Ohio State. This is a Michigan team that, they got to find some sort of balance. They got to find some sort of balance on the offensive side of the football. In that same time slot, Nebraska. Boy, you talk about finding something. It took them a while to find something against Purdue. They got some questions. They got some questions to be answered. And if you look at some of these games coming up, they play Rutgers at home. They go on the road to Indiana. They play Ohio State. I'm not saying it will happen because I'm not sure if I do think it will happen, but there's a potential where if things kind of continue on special teams and the offensive line in this direction, there's a potential this thing could snowball a little bit, and not in the good direction for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. There's still a lot of good about this team right now, but that performance against Purdue, right? And this was a performance against Purdue where they fired their offensive coordinator, right? The defense was fine, though, for Nebraska, but Purdue fired their offensive coordinator after this specific football game. But this was a 3-0 game in favor of the Boilermakers, their mid-second half. So mid-third quarter, I should say. So they got to figure out their offensive line, right? They had Teddy Prohaska go down in fall camp. They had Turner Corcoran go down. Micah Mazuka has had some issues up front as well. Now you're getting some youth. You're getting a lot thinner up front of the offensive line, and that's an issue when you have a prized possession like Dylan Raiola. But I think it's affected more their run game as well. And boy, they might not kick another field goal the rest of the year. Boy, they got to figure that out. They got to figure that out if they want to reach their goals. Wisconsin teased us for a little bit, certainly against the USC Trojans, and USC's got to find a way to start out fast in some of these games, right? You saw them come on late in the second half against Michigan, and now the second half outscoring Wisconsin 28-0 in that particular game. That was impressive, certainly there for USC. But if they can play a 60-minute game, they can be a good team. And Wisconsin, I mean, this thing could spiral, I think, for the Badgers here. Like they play Rutgers in a couple of weeks, and the patience is waning on their offense right now. Like there are former players tweeting out their displeasure with this specific coaching staff. This is going in the direction that Wisconsin's bull streak could possibly end, certainly when all is said and done. Of course, we talked about Penn State and Illinois, Oregon, and Ohio State certainly cleaning up in the night slot. So, that's those were my takeaways, certainly from this last week of Big Ten football.
Now, Illinois has a bye week next week, so there's no Illinois game to preview, but that doesn't mean that Ted isn't going to bring the goods and let us know what us Illini fans can just kind of sit back, relax, and watch without any stress on Saturday. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, Ted, no Illinois, but that doesn't mean that there's not any intriguing games this upcoming weekend. There's one that I find extra intriguing. I'm going to give the floor to you, and let's see if we agree on which one.
Yeah, I think the first one that I really pinpoint as maybe the most competitive game, the one that could certainly go down to the last field goal, and that might be to the chagrin of maybe one of these teams, is Rutgers and Nebraska, and that being the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Right, this is a very interesting football game. We talk about what Rutgers is and wants to be, that chop mentality, that run game. Kylan guy, currently the second leading rusher in the Big Ten right now. That the pass defense, right? They gave up about 300 yards or so to Will Rodgers on that Friday night game last week. So we'll see if they get that dialed in. We know Dylan Raiola can throw the football certainly down the field in that particular game, but this is a big game. This is a huge game, I think, for both teams. I think going on the road to a place like Nebraska, if Rutgers can come out of this with a win, I think it really proves to us that this is a team that can certainly compete at a much higher level. And I think that they are competing at a high level right now. I mean, we knew Kylan guy. We knew the defense was returning just about everybody. But I think actually the quarterback, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, and the play that he's played with, I think he's comfortable in the system with his old buddy Kirk Sherlock as the offensive coordinator. You got guys like Ian Strong and Dymere Miller going out there and making plays at wide receiver. I think the talent at wide receiver is better. I think the quarterback is better throwing the football this year. And overall, I think that just makes Rutgers a better football team and more of a threat against this Nebraska defense. I'm curious to see exactly the type of game plan that Kirk could have against this Nebraska defense, because this is a Nebraska team now on the other side of the ball we shift to, that because of these issues on the offensive line, because of some of these injuries up front, this is a team that maybe isn't running the football as well as they would like to. Certainly not, what Kyle Monangai is doing there on the offensive side of the football. This is going to be such a fun game. I would be shocked if this one is decided by more than 10 points. I think when all is said and done, which leads us back to one thing: Nebraska, one-score games. I said this a few weeks ago when they lost to Illinois. When I was looking ahead to this Rutgers game, I said, this is probably going to be a close game. And if I'm Nebraska, I want this to be a close game. Like, if I'm Matt Rule, I want to see my guys respond, beat a tough, really good team. And if they can win by 6, or if they can win by 5 or 4 or 3 or whatever ends up being, I think that could maybe get a little bit, one of those those mental monkeys off of their back, so to speak, because, you look at the game against Illinois, making mistakes down the stretch and not able to win that particular game. It reared its ugly head. There were some issues against Purdue. So this could certainly get that going back in the right direction. But like I said before, if the Scarlet Knights are able to win, I think they're going to gain even more respect.
And Oregon has a decent matchup as well.
Yeah, you look at Michigan State and Oregon Friday night. That one is in Autzen Stadium. The first couple of Big Ten games for the Ducks so far this season have been interesting. You got a familiar helmet, jerseys, stadium, all that type of thing in UCLA. And then you go on a team with a lot of Oregon State flavor. Jonathan Smith, the head coach, Aiden Childs, the quarterback, Jack Valling, the tight end, Tanner Miller at center, all these type of guys who were all Pac-12 type of guys at Oregon State. So a little bit of familiarity here again, but this is a Michigan State team. You saw it against Ohio State. They just turn the football over. Like they are just giving the football away like it's a Christmas present right now. And it's very similar. It's very similar to what this team did last year. They're just doing it in a lot of different ways. You do that against Oregon, it's certainly not going to go well. Another matchup I kind of have my eyes on: Iowa at Ohio State. This is really, I think, the first challenge for the Buckeyes. You have that Iowa defense on the other side. You have Caleb Johnson, who's the leading rusher. Well, at least he was before the bye week. That might go back to Ashton Genty at this point. But you have Caleb Johnson, who's the leading rusher in the Big Ten. I can say that for certain, certainly right now. So this is going to be a test for the Ohio State run defense. If Iowa can run the football pretty successfully in this game, keep that Ohio State offense off the field, shorten the game, this one could get a little bit interesting. But you look at Iowa's defense specifically in the secondary this season. They've given up a few big plays, and then you got who's going to cover Jeremiah Smith? Like, which one of these corners is going to cover Jeremiah Smith? Spoiler alert, I don't think any of them are.
Yeah, right? And that's not Iowa's problem. That's the country's problem.
That's yep. And you look at what Iowa's done so far this season against much lesser talent. Jeremiah Smith is stepping up. Emeka Ibuka is strong. Like, they have so many weapons, and there's so many different things that they can do on offense. I think it's going to be tough for Iowa. Maybe Iowa could keep it close for a little bit if they run the football, but eventually Ohio State is too stout up front on defense that they're eventually going to stop it and know that this is a one-dimensional football team, and then they're going to hit big plays certainly over the top. Last one I want to touch on. How about Michigan as a dog at number 10 in the country at an unranked Washington team, a rematch of last year's national championship game. Okay, let's look at last week what happened. Minnesota, they got a lot of momentum going in the pass game when they were able to get some quick passes off early, neutralize that pass rush a little bit. Max Brosmer got in a rhythm. Will Rodgers is one of the leading passers right now in the Big Ten Conference. Denzel Boston is a really good threat down the field for the Washington Huskies. We'll see about that offensive line against that Michigan pass rush. That could certainly be a challenge for the Huskies in this one, but I think that this is going to be a competitive game. You know Seattle is going to be juiced. You know the greatest setting of college football is going to be hyped up for this matchup. I think that this one's going to be close. I think that this is going to be another close game on Big Ten Saturday night because I just don't think Michigan is in a position to blow anybody out. You look at the remainder of their schedule and how they play as a one-dimensional offense. I just don't see them winning games by more than 3 touchdowns against anybody the rest of the year. I would be surprised at this point, just the way they kind of drag people like Iowa, right, had been the last couple of years where they drag people down, make you play a certain style, and just hope that they make a couple of plays when all of a sudden done, lean on their defense, lean on the run game. So I'm interested to see what Washington's defensive line, I think, has stepped up and been pretty solid so far this season. They got a decent secondary. It's all going to depend. I'm very curious if Washington steps up and they halt this run game, halt the explosive plays, and they're able to make enough plays against the secondary like Minnesota was, we could be seeing upset. We could be seeing upset right now for Jed Fish if they can beat the Michigan Wolverines. But no, I think we've got some intriguing matchups, and also don't sleep on USC going to Minneapolis to take in Minnesota as well.
Yeah, it'll be, like I said, nice to sit back and relax and just kind of scout some of our future opponents. You know, we have Purdue in 2 weeks. We have Michigan, obviously, the week after, and then Oregon coming up. It'll be nice to kind of sit back and see what to expect in those coming weeks. But Ted, again, you're the best in the world at what you do. Please let the folks watching know what's going on your channel.
Well, speaking of the best in the world, I might have that Michigan-Washington game side by side with Bad Blood, right? And I know you're rocking the shirt every single week, and I am in the corner of Team Punk for that matchup against Drew McIntyre. So I just want to get that right out of the way right away. But you can find me on Twitter at Big Ten Ted over there. Also, on YouTube. Got some previews coming up as well. Got some picks against the spread, over-unders, that kind of thing coming up on Friday. And then Saturday, we've got some good games. You know, Iowa, Ohio State, Rutgers, Nebraska, Michigan, Washington. Going to have some Saturday reactions from those games as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm excited for this weekend.
Appreciate having you on, Ted. We'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good.
All right, we'll wrap it up with a couple comments from earlier today. Jason says, in regards to the Kylan Boswell segment, means nothing really. A hometown Champaign kid in Boswell and a returning starter makes sense to me. Ryan says, exhibition game only a month away. I'm so intrigued by the talent on this team, but with all the youth, I worry that you will underperform the expectations. Yeah, I've said this, especially with our daunting out-of-conference schedule to start off the season. I wouldn't be surprised if we stumble a little bit early as a team. Chemistry continues to develop, but I truly believe that the talent in that locker room, the ceiling is actually higher than the talent that was in the locker room last year, the team that made the Elite Eight run. Now, I'm not saying they're better basketball players today, but I just think when it comes to pure ability, these 18-year-olds have a lot to be excited about. Jason also says, I think and have said this, Boswell is going to have a breakout year, some home cooking and refocus. He will be a man on a mission. I hope so. I think if Boswell can be the captain, just the guy to calm things down, and I think that raises the floor of this team considerably. If Kylan struggles a little bit the way he did in Arizona, and he isn't able to provide the leadership that I think could be his number one asset that he's going to be bringing to Illinois this year, then all of a sudden, we go from a top 3 team, at least in my eyes, in the conference, to one that'll probably be more in the top 5, top 6 range. And Ryan says, I really wish Dane would have stayed. His defense got so much better at the end of the season, and he's a scoring machine. When the offense is struggling, he can get you a bucket anytime. Yeah, but Dane got some money. Dane got paid, and that's just kind of what college players do. For whatever reason, Brad Underwood, Tyler Underwood don't feel like Dane fits too well in their system. So maybe it's best for both parties that they decide to go in a different direction. Thank you so much for joining me on this live edition of Big Ten TED Tuesdays, filmed on Monday. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like the picks of Kylan Boswell and Ty Rodgers? Let me know what your feelings on the football season is. I'm going to be having an episode later on this week where I talk about the likes and dislikes of the football team thus far. On your way out, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us immensely. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, ILL. Love you guys.